Hey, welcome back. And today we're talking essential fly fishing knots. That's right. We're talking about the knots that you're going to use from the reel all the way down to the fly. And to get started, we are going to go from the reel to our backing. Now, when we start talking here, we're talking about connecting a line to the arbor inside your reel, which is the cylindrical piece inside, and you tie your backing to this. Now, when you buy your backing, it comes like this. You can see that there's no loop, and there's a couple knots that you have an option of using here. Now, before I go any further, let me just say I'm giving you the more popular knots that people are using. I'm not telling you which knots you need to use, have to use. I may give you the idea of what I'm using and why I'm using it, but that definitely doesn't say you have to use it for your rig. Now, the two I'm going to talk about here for the connection between your arbor or your reel to your backing is an arbor knot or a uni knot. Essentially, these knots are very similar in the sense that they wrap around the arbor, create your knot, and cinch it down. They both seem very good to use. They're both tight um, and work really well. So again, your arbor knot or your uni knot. Now, from there, we're going to go from our backing to our fly line. Now, this is kind of dictated in a sense of how the lines themselves are set. Like I said, the backing comes and it doesn't have a loop, but generally, when you get a new fly line, as we have the fly line on this reel here, you have what we call a welded loop. You can see that the loop is already in there. It's flush around both sides. There's no knot there. So that's where the welded piece comes. It blends to the line as a whole. So when we're talking this, no knot or loop rather, and there is a loop. And so we want to create a loop. And the way we do that is a perfection loop. We would add a perfection loop here, and if there wasn't one on your fly line, add it there. Once we have the two loops, now we want to do a loop to loop connection or a loop to loop knot. However you want it to be said, it would be interchangeable. But again, loop to loop once you have the two loops. If you don't have loops and you're choosing not to put a perfection loop on your lines, then you want to use a nail knot. And basically, this is the thinner line cinching around the thicker line and pulling tight. And I suggest on this one, if you're going to do the nail knot, purchase the nail knot tool as it makes it a lot easier to tie. You can obviously tie it without, and that'll be in a video later, but I suggest using the nail knot tool as it does make it easier. Once we're done there, we're going to go from the fly line to the leader. Now, generally, when these are both purchased new, they will have their loops. The fly line will have that welded loop, and the leader will have what looks like a perfection loop in it. Because they both have loops, you're going to just go right ahead and do your loop to loop connection or your loop to loop knot. Again, if for some reason you do not have the loops, you choose not to make the loops. You do either the nail knot or now you can add in the blood knot. Both of these knots are very strong. Essentially, they're the same except in the fact that a nail knot is taking the lines and it's going to create a set of wraps around just one side and cinch down, whereas the blood knot is you're going to create some wraps around the fly line, some wraps around the leader, and it's going to cinch down. Again, both of them very successful knots, very tight, work well, so it's your choice. But the three knots here are your perfection loop, if you have loops, and without, your blood knot or your nail knot. Next, we move on from our leader to our tippet. Now, not everyone is going to use tippet. I suggest to use tippet because your leaders come in 7.5 or 9 foot lengths, and they are tapered from the end that starts at the fly line down to where you'd either put your fly or a tippet line. If you don't use tippet, if you lose any of the line, you keep cutting it, whatnot, you're gonna lose the taper, which you don't want to do. So with these connections, The two knots I want to talk about are either your blood knot or your double surgeon's knot. Again, both of these are very effective. The double surgeon's knot is, in my opinion, quicker to tie, and the blood knot is also, though, an effective knot. I do have a really quick way to tie your blood knot, which will be in a video coming soon. So stay tuned for that. But again, for the connection between your leader and your tippet will be a double surgeon's knot or a blood knot. Now, here's where we get to have a little bit of fun. Your tippet to your fly. There are a lot of options when it comes to this. I'm going to mention 5 or 6. I think it's 6. It's going to be your clinch knot, your improved clinch knot, a Davey knot, a uni knot, Palomar knot, and a non-slip loop knot. I'm going to just start with the non-slip loop. From what I've learned and seen and used, the non-slip loop is for when trying to articulate your fly. And all that fancy word articulate means is to take that fly and give it a little bit of a movement. Whereas like the fly that I have here already has that articulated end to it, called this is a sculpin fly, which already has that. However, a lot of your streamers do not. So you create that loop on the end by the eye, and it allows for the fly to get some movement, making it look more realistic, like a minnow, a crawfish, a leech, you know, things of that nature. It also can be used on nymph rigs, so it's not just for that. After that, we want to talk about the clinch and the improved clinch. Obviously, basically the same, except the improved has one more tie around through the hole and cinches up. They say that the improved is stronger. I haven't done the test myself yet. I haven't seen a test actually done. I just hear about the data. So I don't want to be the one saying that one is more secure or stronger than the other. But I do know this. I learned, and all my friends learned, the clinch knot when we were younger, which is way back in the day, and it worked. I use it today, and it works, which means it's going to work in the future. So it's obviously a working knot and a good knot to go with. The improved is just one more good loop in there, like I said, and cinch down. Next is our Palomar knot. The Palomar knot is a very fast and strong knot. The only issue I see that you could possibly run into here is, like this time of the season, it's winter time. The waters are very cold, and you're trying to get deep with a small nymph or such, and those hooks, those 20s, 22s, they're really small. Those eyes are really small. And so getting that tippet doubled over and in through that eye is going to be a lot more difficult. At least if you have the eyes that I have, seeing it to make it happen is already going to be tough enough. But if you so choose to use it, very good knot to use. Next is the uni knot. The uni knot is a knot that once you watch the video on it, you're going to see, I don't think it stands for it. Maybe it does. I don't know. But universal. It's a universal knot that is used for many applications. But in this case, it's quick and it cinches down. You could also double it up to be like a non-slip loop, with the fact that once it catches something or gets caught on something and you set, it's going to cinch down initially. So it will go from a non-slip or a loop down to an actual cinched knot. And then the last one is your Davey knot. Now, this is a super quick knot. I watched a couple guys tie it in the last month. It's very quick, very strong, effective. But again, it's your preference which one you're going to want to use here. So going over these knots again, you're going to have your clinch, your improved clinch, Davey, uni, Palomar, and your non-slip loop. Now, some of the stuff that dictates the knots that I'm using is, one, the kind of day I'm having. Am I with a client, not with a client? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it I'm in the water, out of the water? Do I have time, not time? You know, it's just, there's a lot of things that kind of dictate what you're using these for. Am I using a dropper? Am I just putting on a fly or whatnot? So when choosing these, practice them. Figure out which ones work best for you, which ones that are tight and create good strength for you, and go with them. Get comfortable with them. Learn these other knots and use them in the applicable manner that you need. So have a lot of, I hate to say it this way, but whatever. Put this tool in your tackle box. right? Tool in your toolbox. This is just another knot in your tackle box. Now, some important parts of when tying knots that I want to stress, something I wasn't really good at in the beginning, wasn't even aware I was really supposed to be doing, but you want to lubricate your knots before you cinch them down. The reason you want to lubricate them is when you're making these knots and cinching, the line is creating friction. That friction is creating heat, which is now going to reduce the strength of your line. So make sure you lubricate it. There's really generally three ways that you can lubricate a line. The most popular is your saliva. You can dip it in the water you're in, or you can buy a commercial lubricant to put on the line to reduce the friction. But again, lubricate your line, reduce the friction so you don't weaken the line. The next thing, once you've got that knot cinched down, take it and really tug on it. Make sure that that knot is cinched down tight and that it's not going to slip off. A lot of times I've done it because I'm a new fisherman and I really didn't know. Once I got that knot in there, sometimes when I tugged on it, it was just enough there that it slipped back through and everything come unwind. And then you get this creation of a looped line all tangled up, weak looking. Snip that off. Don't use it. It's already weak. It's going to break. So snip that off. Start with a fresh piece of line. And again, make sure that you have a good solid knot and it's snug. So lubrication and checking the knots. You do not want to lose the fish of your dreams, your personal best, because you didn't tie a proper knot and it not hold. So definitely take your time with that. If you want to see further videos on the actual knots we've discussed and more, go to the description below. There is a link to the knots. Initially, because this is the beginning of my show, you're going to see some knots from other folks in the beginning, but I will start adding mine in there. I have a few tricks that I've learned along the way to help tie some of these knots a little bit quicker. So stay tuned for that. And if you hadn't, please look down below, subscribe, get some notifications on the upcoming videos, and be a part of what we're creating here at 706 Fly Guy. Until the next time, I'll see you then.